It's James's stuffed pumpkin, and I'm going to talk about the second half of Teen Wolf, the creator, and a Nicolas Cage movie at the bottom. And James is going to talk about Mammoth for the most part.
Mammoth. It's not a Mammoth book, though.
So I'll get this over with quick, and then James will be talking to you for the rest of the time. And luckily we've started hiking again. As you can see, I've gotten quite large this winter.
It's just been the last little while.
Yeah,
when you've been
it was
laid
hash
up.
browns.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't help
and
that
we haven't been walking
No.
the way we do ordinarily when the paths are clear.
Yeah, well, I was doing artwork, and then I got sick, and then whatever. Anyway, Teen Wolf. So if you've watched my review of the first half of this, it wasn't that great. And the second half so far hasn't been that great either. I'll tell you where I've gotten to so far. Season 5, Part 2, Disc 2. That's where we're in. And it's pretty stupid. But honestly, I think they were trying for something like... they'd had such a... well, not these guys, but... because I don't think MTV put out Buffy at all, but... it was a generational phenomenon, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they even managed to get an Angel spin-off from that. I mean, he was already aging, was not looking so much like a vampire, I mean, given he was aging. But that even worked for a few seasons. So, I think they were going for that sort of thing with this Teen Wolf. They were thinking, okay, well, the vampire thing really worked out for that, so this generation, let's really push the wolf thing. And so they have the same sort of thing with the teenagers in high school, and but this time it's wolfy, and only there's a lot of other things too, like Buffy, there were a lot of other supernatural beings and whatever, but it doesn't have the humor. Buffy the Vampire Slayer worked because it had the humor, and Angel didn't work as well because it didn't have as much. And with Buffy, I mean, you had some great actors there. You had the guy who ended up becoming Scott Evil. Was the werewolf love interest in...
He's hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen him in where he's had a clunker role.
Yeah.
Might have been in a few clunker movies, but he always seems to pull it off.
Well, he's
I don't know
great.
what his name
So,
is.
Seth Green, I think. So anyway,
Yeah, well,
he was the werewolf in that, which is funny, right? That's funny on its own.
Yeah.
The fact that they cast him as the werewolf.
Yeah.
Because here he is, he does not look like a tough guy
he looks
at
pretty
all.
geeky.
And his character, he wasn't a tough guy at all, and yet this is who he happens to be, right? So
who else are you
was
going to
funny.
mention as good actor?
Well, there were a lot of good actors in there. Like there was
The one that occurs to me is...
the woman who played Willow. You like her? Oh,
She was pretty good.
you like Xander, the guy who played Xander.
Not as
And
much
that's
as
the thing.
Spike.
Oh yeah, he was great too.
Spike's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were a lot of great actors in that show, which this doesn't have. It doesn't have any great actors.
Kind of tough.
These guys are trying to pull something off, and it's just not. I don't know how they managed to get this many seasons out of it, honestly.
What season did you say this was?
Well, I'm already halfway through season 5. More than
That's
halfway
interesting.
through. Yeah. And I think it was 18 discs in the first one and 12 discs in the second set, the second one. So a lot of shows that they put out, and they had sometimes they had some alright stories, but they were trying to fill it in ways. Like there was one episode where they were getting poisoned, and one werewolf was in a well, and they managed to get him out and get him to the vet to get him some treatment, and, which is kind of funny that the vet is giving werewolves treatment. But the vet just does a scalpel. He just cuts with a scalpel, and this mystical gas escapes, and they're fine. And it's like, okay, but werewolves have claws, so couldn't they just do that on their own? Why did they have to make this big? So there were lots of things like that where these things are happening, and it's like, okay, don't show us the treatment if it's going to be ridiculous and whatever. So there's lots of instances like that. Or like I mentioned Xander in Buffy. Well, there's the young man who's the werewolf. His best friend is just a regular guy who's doesn't have superpowers or anything, but yet he's helping himself. So he's a real hero, right? And that's how you see Xander in Buffy. Because it's like, yeah, Buffy has all these superpowers, but Xander's there fighting, and he has nothing. You know, like Willow ends up being a powerful witch, and you know, these other characters, they're powerful in other ways, right? And so with this young man who doesn't have any superpowers, he ends up dating a coyote woman, and she reminded me quite a bit of Anya in Buffy, which is who Xander was dating, because she didn't know how to be human. You know, this coyote woman, she was like, she'd been a coyote almost her whole life and didn't know how to shapeshift back to being human, and so she doesn't fit in as a human, right? She doesn't seem so that's kind of funny, but she's not a good actor. It's not funny enough on its own without you writing a little bit into it, and they don't, you know. So it seems to me that they were trying to achieve the same sort of fame by using Buffy as a template for this series, and they didn't pull it off. So, but I'll let you know when I'm finished. I brought this out basically just so that I could show you just how little I like these ones, because I didn't care for Teen Wolf. So the creator, it seems like they were trying to do maybe a modern sort of Blade Runner kind of feel or whatever, and it didn't work out. It's not good. So if you're all about watching a lot of special effects and stuff like that, well, then you might really like this. But this is not going to have longevity, because that's all it has, special effects. The Retirement Plan with Nicolas Cage, bottom of the stack. James says he likes Nicolas Cage, his new look for this. It looks good. But,
he looks like a poet that I know.
But maybe honestly, I was writing poetry while watching this, and I could barely be bothered to look up at all. And I did look up at one point and noticed, oh, Ron Perlman's in this.
My God.
I like him, but didn't like him in this. I mean, I didn't like the movie. It just wasn't worth watching. And I was sitting there thinking, writing my poetry and thinking, so is this the retirement plan? You're just going to do crappy movies now? Like, I mean, I've talked about it in the past, how I've threatened to put Nicolas Cage on a no-watch list because he's done some clunkers. But
well, you don't have a long list, do you?
No.
So that is the sign, folks.
Yeah, but this one, a clunker. So James is going to talk about Mammoth now, by Richard Stone.
Yeah. Stone Age.
Yeah, you have 10 minutes, or 20 minutes.
So this book, I'm warning you, spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry. I haven't finished it. I'm just starting to read it. I'll be finished it probably this evening. Pretty good book. It's a little short. Especially seeing that it was put out in hardcover. 270 pages with back pages, front pages, and 8 pages of photos. For this kind of subject matter, you've got to come up with something more meaty, I think. More than 207 pages. So, a few problems with it. There should be more maps. There's the same map on the front. And back inside covers. It looks to be a remake or of something that was, when was it published? Originally 1851. This map here. And show you. Moving slowly because my back's bothering me a little bit. We're on a bit of a water. So you get blown up maps of the areas that he's dealing with where Mammoth lies. So this is one place up here, this peninsula up here, that's located there in Siberia, and the other one seems to be located in here, this general area. So massive mammoth finds, and it's been centuries they've been digging these tusks out for ivory. And there's been a big question about it. So I've been dealing with catastrophism. I was mentioning that this guy published 2001. Let's just see, 2001 gives 3 theories for what wiped out the mammoths. In case you haven't known, they don't exist anymore. Some of the people mentioned in here are trying to bring them back to life. But something ended their reign, as it were. And it looks as though they ended roughly the same time as most of them. As the mega, is that they call them megatheria? Big beasts in Greek in the New World. Now he claims, and I'm sure it's not his own personal opinion, that some mammoths made it all the way to 3,700 years ago, maybe about 1700 BC, I suppose, on Wrangel Island up in the Arctic Ocean. And so there's this idea that there, which seems to be the received opinion in the New World, that they were hunted to extinction. Okay, come off me. You got people who are in the Stone Age using, in the New World, things like Clovis, Folsom points. And these Clovis points who were really clumsy things. And you're going to have some person taking on a mammoth, mastodon, whatever, or a whole bunch of them taking them on. Now, if these things were mammoth jumps, you know, you take out a lot of them. If bison jumps here in the relatively immediate vicinity, there's head smashed in, buffalo jump, bison jump, or whatever they call it. West of here, kind of northwest of the place called Fort McLeod. And yeah, you can take them out there, but I don't know if there's any signs that these mammoths were taken out in that fashion. Then there's the idea that they caught some sort of superbug maybe something like a predecessor of COVID that wiped them out, along with a whole bunch of other species. Yeah. Sometimes things don't jump from one species to another. That effectively. You get a super or super duper bug, you jump across so many species and wipe them out. A little skeptical, even cynical. And then there's one, I'm going to have to review it so I can do it more justice probably than it deserves. I want to be able to explain it sufficiently. When I was reading through it, it seemed pretty far-fetched. No. If I really took these dudes out, remember, I was showing you where they were finding rich finds. We're pretty close to the Arctic Ocean. There's another possibility that's what took them out. And that is a catastrophe of some sort, of like a catastrophe related to that had worldwide reach. In other words, brought on by a meteorite, or more likely, a comet. And I'm not talking about one impact with a comet. I'm talking about multiple impacts with pieces of comets. After comet Shoemaker-Levy happened, when was that? 1993. It became fairly clear what's happened in the world, probably multiple times. Going back to even before the end of the dinosaurs, let's say the Permian extinction, that was even worse than what took out the dinosaurs apparently. In the Earth's gravitational field, a comet, they found out Halley's Comet, for example, is a kind of like a loose agglomeration, maybe three large pieces of things that are kind of like hanging together like this. They're not stuck together. That's maybe by gravity or something. A little bit, but they're so small with gravity. Much. They're all going along at the same speed. It's like a little mini traffic jam, all at the same speed. You get something like that in the Earth's gravitational field, it's going to come apart. So Comet Shoemaker-Levy came on. Our solar system has been whumped and thumped 20 times in my lifetime, Pauline's lifetime, in the lifetime of any one of you that was born before 1993. Comet Shoemaker-Levy divided up into 20 or 21 parts. I forgot. Wasn't keeping count. But at least 20 parts. And each one of those parts thumped into Jupiter. So it hit our solar system. It didn't, thank heaven. None of those parts hit us. Why? The area of the impact, the disturbance in Jupiter's atmosphere was, check this out, is small by comparison with Jupiter's diameter. But the diameter, I should say, well, the area too. But the diameter of these impact zones on Jupiter, each one of them was as long as the diameter of the Earth. One of those impacts, just one of those impacts would have affected the atmosphere on one whole hemisphere of the Earth. Absorbed that? If the Earth got hit 20 times, I don't know what would happen. It'd probably be worse than what happened with the Permian thing. It'd probably end all life. Just wee little bits of comets. One comet. So I hate to be the bearer of not so great news, but we don't live in the best of all possible worlds, as Leibniz would have it. He's a mathematician and a philosopher of some note, much more distinguished as a mathematician than a philosopher. a contemporary of Isaac Newton. So let's say about 1700 AD. Quite a while. Best of all possible worlds. We never know. We don't live in a uniformitarian world. The present isn't the key to the past. We don't have stuff raining down on us. Now we're getting a better feel for these things because there was something that exploded. This is in this millennium, this century, over a fairly large city in the Ural Mountains, the boundary between Europe and Asia and Russia. And I gather it killed maybe 100 people, injured 1,000. Over 100 years ago, a place called Tunguska in Siberia. I was trying to find it on the map, couldn't find it. I found Tungus. That's a river.
Will you want asparagus?
That would be great. And I think the idea now is it exploded in the air, knocked trees down for square kilometers on each side, and caused a major, well, you know, like there was a big flash and all that sort of stuff. Interesting sort of stuff. Apparently there were animals wandering around that survived. They wouldn't have been right at impact, ground zero, and they showed signs of burning and stuff like that. So in some ways it's very fortunate it didn't occur over a heavily populated area. In some ways it's unfortunate that it didn't occur, let's say, near a populated area. You know, minimum damage, but someplace where they could have sent people in to find out what happened. You know, like it's really, really, it would have, especially back then, it would have been very hard to access that. It would have taken probably months to get into there. I think I'm being melodramatic. Months. He described someone back in the 19th century, I believe it was, trying to get up in there. And it took more than weeks, it took months up to get up to the areas where the mammoth bones and corpses are tusks. So I think there's a reason why these things are found in, you know, on the coastline. Yeah, this is the ideas of religion. You know, like you get a piece of a comet landing here, just a small piece, all it would take. You get tides apparently at point of impact, miles high. That's kilometers and another half a kilometer again. Maybe more. Now those waves would dissipate as they come here. Let's say it was here, but it could be here, whatever. But they dissipate from point of impact. But then they get here. And when some of this stuff is, you know, there are mountains down here, you know, there's the Yablanovi Mountains and so on and so forth. And especially here, it's pretty rough. But over here, it's, there's some low-lying land. Anyway, you could get a big tidal wave coming in, and understand, yeah, well, up here, he's finding stuff up here. But you could get a tidal wave coming in, killing a bunch of mammals and other beasts, and then washing some of the stuff. Some of it would get up against hills and mountains, washing it back down here. It could end up on capes and stuff like that. You know, when they're saying that mammoths were surviving up here, living here, I'm going, yeah, okay. What really happened is, see, these things got kind of like freeze-dried. And we'll take, I've explained to you, I think, what happened with Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, And that, I'm afraid, is a description with details that strike one as legendary. But the core of it, I'm afraid, is very, very true and serious. I'm not going to say frighteningly true, because I don't think we're faced with anything like that in the immediate future, but you never can tell. So, you got the Norse people. We don't know exactly where they're located, but theoretically a little bit west of here, but basically at these latitudes. Like around the Arctic Circle. And this is how it goes. Balder, the god of fertility, is killed by a sprig of mistletoe. Mistletoe is related to, from what I can tell, the berries of mistletoe represent the stars of the Pleiades. Around the world, the Pleiades is associated, where the legends are detailed enough, with the end of the world, and if they're even more detailed, with something like a flood. The stories are different from the Noachian flood, as they call it, the flood at the time that's described in the Bible, where Noah's described as surviving and taking animals on him on the boat that he makes out of gopher wood or shittim wood or whatever it's called. I wasn't cussing. I think that's the Hebrew term. It's translated, I don't know how accurate it is, gopher wood. I think it's in the King James Version, it's from 400 years ago. It's probably not very accurate. So it doesn't have much to do with that. It's just the basic story. Now what happens? Once he gets killed, he's the god of fertility. Ragnarok comes on. Twilight of the gods. What happens first? Surt, I think is his name, god of fire. He comes and burns the world. It's around the time of the Younger Dryas. There's a geologists nowadays are coming around. They're taking their time. They're taking their time for the old flunkies to die out, the old diehards to die out. Coming around to the idea that something serious happened to the world during the Younger Dryas. I already predicted it. Before I found out about them turning to that idea, I'd already said something happened to the world. Younger Dryas wiped out the large beasts in North America and elsewhere. And these folks, these geologists, are saying, working with astronomy, are saying the 17% of the world's vegetation burned during this one period. It would have been just a matter of days, weeks, maybe. 17% of the world's vegetation burned. I don't believe in Surt anymore, the fire of God, any more than I believe in the Hebrew and Christian God. But that's just an attempt. Those two things are an attempt at explanation. Something like nature threw this at, not so much us, but at the earth. So what happens after that? The Fimbul winter. And what is that? The world, as the Norse people saw it, got covered